Hey. You can probably tell we're having some technical issues. Scarlett's not really available right now, as you can see. So yeah, it's just me. Ignore that. I actually have something pre-recorded for a situation like this, so you know what, I'm just going to use the camera remote to cut to that. If you're watching this, then I'm dead. Or on holiday or something. I don't know, I'll explain more about that in a minute. But first, did you watch the Game Awards? I guess I should specify in December of 2025. And to bury the lead, it appears Wizards of the Coast is taking time and resources away from Magic and D&D to develop an unrelated video game. Is the framing of that statement entirely fair? Not really, but it's close to the truth, and it's a conversation point that I found interesting enough to discuss here today. Now, for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, there used to be a yearly gaming convention called the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3 for short, where all the big video game companies would come together and talk about what the next year of gaming was going to look like, whilst also showing off a bunch of trailers for upcoming console, handheld and PC games. Not tabletop, we're not talking TCGs or board games here, we're talking video games specifically. The convention kind of collapsed after a lot of companies realised that travelling to E3 and getting a booth or whatever was kind of a pain, especially during lockdown, and that most of the public were only really interested in seeing the trailers anyway, which could, be shown off online. And while you could argue that these events didn't exactly play out the way that I'm describing, it doesn't really matter and is close enough to provide context for what the Game Awards even is and how it's related to a video game from WotC. Now, once E3 started failing, some companies like Nintendo decided to make their own online showcase to garner a bunch of attention for their trailers by just putting them on YouTube. But a lot of video game developers and companies just weren't big enough to attract the same sort of attention that they used to get at E3 with a simple YouTube video like Nintendo could. So step in Jeff Keighley, who's a seemingly nice enough man that's been involved in gaming for a while. And I get the feeling has always wanted to make something of it, like he wants it to be more glamorous than it is. He hosts this yearly show called the Game Awards, which I think is intended to be like the gaming equivalent of the Oscars, but just sort of isn't, because gaming as an industry just isn't as glamorized as Hollywood. But the event is a widely viewed gaming show that exists, and so a lot of the types of companies that would have once shown off their games at E3 have migrated to the Game Awards instead. And it's a lot of fun. Sometimes for the wrong reasons, but you get to see previews for a bunch of games you may otherwise have never heard of, and watch some of the people involved in games you already know and love as they're given awards for their achievements. Which is great, for the most part. My friends and I like to turn watching into a bingo-style drinking game. Cross off a square if a Muppet is somehow involved, cross off a square for technical failures, cross off a square if some backroom programming nerd is shunted on stage to give a speech in front of countless tens of thousands of people globally, whilst visibly shaking and trying to hold their shit together. Cross off a square if the camera cuts to a clearly oblivious Hideo Kojima in the audience who I imagine doesn't speak a word of English but has shown up anyway. Cross off a square if they wheel out an aging celebrity who looks like they have absolutely no idea what a video game even is, just for them to stumble through an announcement that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is now going to be playable in the Xbox Game Pass Day 1 exclusive Roblox mode of Fortnite or whatever. It's a lot of fun. So I watch it. And imagine my surprise when I see the logo for Wizards of the Coast pop up in a trailer. And imagine my further surprise when I discover it's for a video game of a new IP, seemingly unrelated to Magic or Dungeons & Dragons. Now, the reason I give you the full context as to the kind of history of the Game Awards is to hammer home that not only is this a big event, but it's a big gamer event specifically. And I would have to imagine that the circles, the Venn diagram, can you tell that this is a little less scripted than normal? I imagine the crossover between Magic players and video gamers is quite large, so I find it fascinating that I've not really heard anyone in the Magic space even acknowledge that this game exists. Maybe that's changed in the future when you're hearing this, but for me right now, it feels like I'm the only person who saw this trailer or knows this game is coming out. Now, possibly that's because, as I said, this game seemingly features a new IP unrelated to Magic or D&D, so maybe that Venn diagram isn't as crossed over as I thought it would be. Oh, and I only say it's seemingly unrelated to Magic and D&D because I have not watched the trailer since I first saw it. And as I'm sure you can imagine from my bingo game, I don't have a perfect recollection of it, or even remember what it's called if I'm being honest. I'm going to have to Google that. But today I thought we'd talk about why I think this announcement of a new WotC video game is not just great, but something I've been advocating for years on the channel now. God, has it really been years? I think it has. And I want to talk about my hopes and fears surrounding this video game and what that could mean for a possible next step for WotC and Magic. However, let's first quickly address the format of this video. I'm recording this as sort of an emergency backup in case, for whatever reason, I feel I might otherwise miss an upload for a video one week. But at time of recording, I'm prepping this video for that eventuality in addition to my regular workload, which is why this is a little bit more casual and conversational and unscripted. I imagine probably less meticulously edited too, and I'd also guess very basic on the visuals. I suspect on screen I've just been showing contextless screenshots of the game trailer because it's just quicker and easier to make, which is admittedly not ideal for a YouTube video, but I've only got so many hours in the day, and I promise I'll do my best to try and present this with the highest quality that I can. Please bear in mind I wouldn't be doing this if I felt I had another choice, and remember it is just me running this channel. Maybe come check out my Patreon. Now, some of you will rightly point out that missing an upload isn't that big of a deal, and I could absolutely have just not uploaded anything if I'm unable to. But in the time of my channel, I haven't missed an upload yet. I thought this chit-chat format would be easy enough to put together, and doing this would be more fun than doing nothing, plus I want to talk about this video game. And the reason I chose the discussion of this WotC video game as the topic for this emergency backup recording is it's not the type of thing I would normally talk about, and so any kind of discussion around it from me would be a departure from my normal stuff anyway. So why not go all the way with it, and just lean into doing something different, you know? And hey, if this gets a lot of views and positive comments, maybe I'll do more of this talking head podcast style thing in the future. It probably would be easier for me to create. Now, I don't know when, if ever, this video will make it to YouTube, and if enough time passes, eventually the game is going to come out and probably be old news, making, I guess, anything I say here kind of pointless. And if that happens, I guess I'll just upload this audio to my Patreon as a bonus or something. I don't know, we'll see how things play out. If you're listening to this via YouTube right now, then maybe I actually am dead. Probably not, but you never know. I do have one more topic in mind for another emergency backup discussion like this, and I think I'm going to have time to record that this week too, so while I think the chances of my demise are unlikely, if you get another one of these back to back next week, then you should take that for a fact that I've definitely died for sure. Or I'm just on a 2-week holiday or something, who knows. Anyway, I really hope that I have at least edited out that last 5 minutes of furious Googling, because I have since now learned the name of the game in question is Exodus. I rewatched the trailer too, and I'm pretty sure that's Matthew McConaughey. Alright, you know. He was in that, Spaceship one. Oh, you know, with the bookcase. Interstellar, there we go. So, I guess that means he's got some experience with space-related stuff, I don't know. The game itself kind of looks like Mass Effect, which I guess you probably already know because I've been displaying screenshots of it the whole time. If you look at the gameplay screenshots, you'll see it's even got the same cover-based magic-enhanced shooting that Mass Effect did. I'll leave a link below to the actual trailer if you want to watch it afterwards, of course. But I'm getting RPG vibes based off of the ensemble cast. It appears to have a Chosen One narrative, which, yeah, alright, fine. I liked Commander Shepard because he wasn't the Chosen One. He was just a dude that happened to be near that pylon or whatever at the beginning of the first game. I think it's often more fun to imagine that anyone could be the hero of a story, at least when it comes to video games where you have to play the character. But I'm going to reserve judgment for that sort of thing until after I've played it. There were a couple of dialogue sections that concerned me, where one of the companion-looking NPCs would drop a, well, that just happened kind of line. And I'm like, oh, I hope not. I hope the dialogue isn't going to be what corporations think quippy millennials sound like, because that Joss Whedon-style dialogue is fine, but it does get a touch exhausting when it's in everything. So I really hope the game plays its sci-fi elements and settings straight and doesn't have, like, the characters winking to the audience being like, oh, check out the alien tentacles on this guy, or a portal to another dimension, so cringe, or whatever. But yeah, the trailer is more cutscene than gameplay, and even the gameplay elements might not actually be, you know, in the final product. But the few bits of potential gameplay that we saw look decent enough, and you get to punch a space bear in the face, so I personally preferred the slow-paced RPG-style elements of the first Mass Effect over the action cover-shooter styles of the third. But I still enjoyed all 3 games overall because the narrative was solid, and I liked the characters and I was invested. There's one man who pops up in this trailer that looks like the new Garrus to me. In fact, it looks like Exodus is aping a lot of the Mass Effect franchise, and I liked those games, so yeah, as a gamer, I'm in, tell me a story. But as a Magic player, I don't really care what Exodus is, I just want it to be successful. Not like record-breaking, but just a success for a couple of reasons. First, I want WotC to relearn that mild success is still success. I feel like as a company, they've really been making the same mistakes that I think a lot of Hollywood blockbuster studios have been making of late. It seems like it's not enough for a project to turn a profit, but instead something needs to be $1 million mega hit to be considered a success. Now that I think about it, that's kind of true of a lot of gaming companies too. With WotC and Magic, it feels like they want every set to be a record-breaking set. And if a set isn't projected, I assume via pre-sale order numbers, to be a mega blockbuster, then they kind of let the hype for it die and let the attention for it fall to the wayside. I'm thinking specifically about Innistrad Remastered, for instance. But I think the same can be said about things like the Assassin's Creed set, or even things like Foundations, honestly, which is meant to be legal for the next decade or something, and it's only been out a year so far, and it already feels like it's been moved on from in terms of focus. Hey, from my perspective, you're from the future, comment below, when was the last time you heard any WotC officials make any kind of reference to Foundations at all? And so yeah, I want WotC to re-acknowledge smaller successes as successes, because the current rate of Magic releases has felt crazy to me. And I would really like to sit with a set and enjoy the flavour of the plane and the mechanics of the gameplay for longer. Just as I was properly getting into Bloomburrow, it felt like everyone was already looking to the next thing. And then Duskmourn was blink and you miss it. And yeah, I get that they don't want to do blocks and they want to do single set after single set, because they're worried that one of those sets could be a flop, and so sticking with it for a long time would kind of suck. But I think this solution of just constantly throwing new stuff at us so that we never have time to stop and think about if we've actually enjoyed something before being moved on, it's probably not any better as an approach. I think it will lead to us feeling numb to the game, or at the very least the narrative, which already seems to be happening. So I sort of hope this video game is a mid-sized success, and that they still take that as a win. What I don't want is another D&D Honor Among Thieves situation where that movie I think didn't perform to expectation, and so WotC Hasbro reacted by not just stamping out any potential for a sequel, but it appears they scrapped the entire notion of making any future movies at all entirely, which, if I remember, included selling off their entertainment division of E1. Like, Jesus guys, I thought the movie was good, you didn't need to go scorched earth on it. And so I hope this video game does well enough for that to not happen, but not so well that it reinforces the notion that any kind of failure into new territory means the endeavour wasn't worth it to begin with. And the reason I think that is because I want WotC to make more video games. Yes, an argument could be made that anything that WotC does outside of making Magic and D&D is taking development time, attention and funding away from their main projects. But if the side projects are themselves profitable, and using separate development teams, then it shouldn't be an issue. For instance, I don't think I've ever heard anyone complain that development of Dungeons & Dragons distracts WotC from making Magic, or vice versa for instance. And it's because they're different teams. And that's the point. In the past, head designer Mark Rosewater has said that R&D for sets like Aether Drift had to be reduced because they wanted to give more attention to Universes Beyond sets. Meaning, yes, in that instance, development was pulled away from one part of Magic, but it was put back into another part of Magic. So Magic as a whole was still being developed, if that makes sense. I can't imagine that sort of practice would still happen with a video game publisher though, because they're completely different skill sets and requirements. Hell, look at Arena, that's literally a Magic video game, and that already has its own team, so I'm prepared to be corrected on this statement, but I can't see this game, Exodus, having any kind of negative impact on Magic at all. However, it could possibly have a positive one. Because I've talked in the past about how I'd love to see Magic branch out into other mediums, and if WotC learned that they can be successful in the video game space, maybe we'll start to see more Magic video games beyond just digital adaptations of the cards. A while back they had that Diablo-style looking game, for instance. I can't remember the name of it. And while I think the grind-heavy live service business model that they implemented into that didn't do the project any favours, I was still very much looking forward to playing it, until it got scrapped. Because I think it would be cool to see, like, the world of Innistrad remastered in a video game and to be able to walk around in it. My point is, where is our Baldur's Gate 3? The world of Magic is just as interesting and in-depth as the world of Dungeons & Dragons, and yet it's D&D that gets the movies and cartoons and seemingly yearly video games, some of which aren't even RPGs. So you can't even argue that it's easier to translate a role-playing game to another medium than it is a TCG. Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance looked like a Vermintide-style hack and slash, for instance, which isn't really representative of the tabletop game Unless you're doing something very specific, I guess. And if you reskinned Dark Alliance, it could just as easily have been about the Gatewatch hacking and slashing their way through the Eldrazi, which I think sounds like fun. Hell, I don't even like hero shooters, but imagine a Magic Rivals, where Arling Cord is like turning into a werewolf and Gideon can go invincible or whatever. Liliana would be a summoner and like, it writes itself. So here's my hope. I want to start to see games of that nature using Magic's IP, stemming from the success of this new Exodus one. Because I like the worlds of Magic and I want to be immersed in them. And that's, I guess, the end of the video. I think Exodus looks good. I'll probably pick that up. If anyone at WotC is watching and wants to send me an early review copy, I will 100% cover it in a video. Though I know you won't, you cowards, because I will be honest about it. And I really hope the game is a success and leads to more Magic games in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Unless you know I'm dead or whatever. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like 27 publications, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, Blank Space, Wanpako Jozu, Miss Murder, a random Patreon, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, WotC send me a review code for that game. And most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know, and I will see you next time. Or maybe I won't.